The arrival of the Silent Hunter. The bronze sky of Zanari Prime shimmered with 3 moons hanging like ancient coins against the twilight. The capital city of the Zanari Empire stretched across the horizon, its crystalline towers catching the last rays of their dying sun. Today marked a historic moment. The first human military advisor had arrived to share knowledge with the galaxy's most powerful empire. Commander Kalith stood at the spaceport's ceremonial platform, her 4 arms crossed in the traditional gesture of welcome. Her scaled skin rippled with anticipation as the human transport descended through the atmosphere. The Zanari military brass stood in perfect formation behind her, their ceremonial armor gleaming with the pride of 10,000 years of conquest. "Remember," Kalith whispered to her aide, "humans are fragile creatures. Their planet has low gravity, thin atmosphere. This sniper they send is probably more scholar than warrior." The transport's ramp lowered with a hiss of equalizing pressure. What emerged was not what anyone expected. Alexei Volkov walked down the ramp with the measured pace of someone who had learned that hurrying meant you missed details, and missing details meant death. He stood barely 6 feet tall, unremarkable by human standards and positively tiny compared to the 8-foot Zanari warriors. His hair was gray at the temples, face weathered by 43 years of life, 30 of them in combat zones humans shouldn't have survived. He wore simple military fatigues, no medals, no rank insignia visible, just a man carrying a long case and a worn backpack. The welcoming committee shifted uneasily. Where was the ceremony, the pride, the display of military might they expected from a warrior culture? "Mr. Volkov," Kalith began, using the translator embedded in her throat, "the Zanari Empire welcomes you. We are eager to learn about human marksmanship techniques." Alexei's eyes swept the crowd once, cataloging positions, exits, and potential threats in the span of a heartbeat. "Just Alexei is fine," he said, his voice carrying the soft accent of the Russian steppes. "I'm not much for formality." The translator struggled with his casual tone, rendering it as, "I reject your rituals" to several officials, causing confused murmurs. They led him through the Grand Boulevard toward the military complex. Citizens of the Empire lined the streets, curious about this small alien who supposedly represented humanity's finest warrior tradition. Children pressed against barrier fields, pointing at the human who looked more like a tired teacher than a soldier. "Your weapon." General Thax gestured at the case Alexei carried, his voice dripping with barely concealed amusement. "It must be very advanced. Plasma? Particle beam? Quantum destabilizer?" Alexei set the case down carefully in the demonstration hall and opened it. Inside lay a rifle that looked almost primitive to Zanari eyes. Chemical propellant, optical scope, mechanical action. Several officers actually laughed. "This fires solid projectiles," one said incredulously. "How quaint." Alexei assembled the rifle with practiced ease, his fingers moving with the unconscious precision of muscle memory. "It does what I need it to do." The proving grounds were a marvel of technology. Holographic targets materialized at various distances, environmental simulators created wind and weather conditions, and sensor arrays tracked every shot with microscopic precision. The Zanari's best marksmen typically engaged targets at ranges up to 800 meters with their plasma rifles. "What range would you prefer?" Kalith asked politely, gesturing to the control panel. Alexei walked to the observation window, studied the terrain simulation for a moment, then pointed to a distant hill in the holographic landscape. "Put a target there." The technician frowned at his console. "Sir, that's 2.7 kilometers. Is that a problem?" The Zanari exchanged glances. Their best sniper, Champion Vrex, had once made a celebrated shot at 1.5 kilometers. It was considered the stuff of legend. Alexei laid prone on the firing platform, settling into position with the patience of stone. His breathing slowed until it was barely perceptible. The Zanari watched their sensors, noting his heart rate dropping to levels they associated with meditation or near death. The crack of the rifle was almost anticlimactic. A simple sound, primitive even, but the holographic target flashed red, indicating a perfect center hit. The room fell silent. "Again," someone whispered. Alexei worked the bolt, chambering another round. This time, he didn't even look through the scope for more than 2 seconds. Another crack, another perfect hit. By the 5th shot, hitting targets at ranges the Zanari considered impossible, several officers had called for security reviews of their sensor equipment. Surely it was malfunctioning. In a secure office 3 floors below, intelligence analyst Yarix was pulling up the classified files Earth had provided about their advisor. Most of it was redacted, blocks of black eating up entire pages. but there was a number at the top of one page that made his secondary heart skip a beat. Confirmed kills, followed by a number that had to be a translation error. He dug deeper, bypassing diplomatic encryptions with military authority codes. More numbers emerged from the darkness, engagement ranges that defied physics, environmental conditions that should have made accurate shooting impossible, and that impossible number that kept appearing in file after file. Yarick's scaled hands trembled as he opened a communication channel to Commander Kalith. Back in the proving grounds, Alexei was packing up his rifle as casually as someone putting away groceries. The Zanari warriors watched him with new eyes, though they didn't yet understand why their instincts were screaming warnings. "Tomorrow," Kalith said carefully, "we would be honored if you would demonstrate for our military academy." Alexei nodded, slinging the rifle case over his shoulder. "Sure, but I'll need coffee. Real coffee, not whatever that synthetic stuff was on the transport." As he walked out, several Zanari noticed something they'd missed before. Despite his casual demeanor, Alexei never presented his back to more than one person at a time. His positioning was always perfect, always tactical. This wasn't conscious behavior, it was instinct carved into his bones by decades of survival. That night, Yarick worked through the encrypted files with growing alarm. Each page revealed another impossibility. Urban warfare in conditions that should have been certain death. Counter-sniper operations where Alexei had eliminated entire kill teams single-handedly. And that number at the top of his final military evaluation before becoming an advisor. 8,731. Confirmed kills. Yarick stared at the number until his eyes burned. The Zanari Empire's most decorated sniper in their entire history had 212. They had welcomed not just a warrior, but an apex predator who had turned killing into an art form so refined it bordered on the supernatural. He reached for his communicator again, this time calling the highest levels of military command. They needed to know what they had invited into their midst. Above in his assigned quarters, Alexei stood at the window, watching the alien city sleep. His fingers unconsciously traced old scars as he mapped firing positions, calculated distances, and noted patrol patterns. Not because he planned to use them, but because after 30 years, his mind simply couldn't stop. Somewhere in the distance, a Zanari patrol craft hummed through the night sky. Alexei tracked it automatically, his brain calculating lead time and wind drift for a shot he'd never take. Old habits, carved in blood and survival, died hard. The revelation of numbers. The morning sun of Zanari Prime painted the military academy's parade grounds in shades of amber and gold. 3,000 of the Empire's finest young warriors stood in perfect formation, their scales polished to mirror brightness, waiting to witness the human demonstration. Alexei arrived carrying a paper cup of coffee he'd managed to procure from a confused food vendor and his rifle case. He looked like he'd just rolled out of bed, which he had. The contrast between his disheveled appearance and the pristine military spectacle around him couldn't have been starker. High above in the observation tower, Commander Kalith stood with the Empire's Joint Chiefs. The previous night's revelations from analyst Yarick had spread through the highest ranks like wildfire. Some refused to believe it, others demanded proof. A few, the wisest perhaps, wondered if they should have guards present. 8,000 is impossible, Admiral Zakara stated flatly, his tail lashing with agitation. No single warrior could survive that many engagements. The humans claim these are only confirmed kills, Yarick said quietly from his position by the tactical display. The actual number is likely higher. Champion Vrex, the Empire's greatest sniper, leaned forward, his 4 eyes focused on the small human below with predatory intensity. I will challenge him. We shall see what is truth and what is propaganda. On the parade ground, Alexei was explaining his philosophy to the assembled warriors, his voice carried by amplifiers across the field. You think of sniping as a skill, he said, taking a sip of coffee. It's not. It's a conversation with death. Every shot is a word, every kill is a sentence. And if you're good enough, you get to write entire paragraphs while death argues back. The translator struggled with the metaphor, but something in his tone transcended language. These young warriors, bred for combat, recognized something fundamental in his words. Your champion wants to challenge me, Alexei continued, looking directly at the observation tower, though it was supposedly one-way glass. That's fine, but let's make it interesting. Vrex was already moving, his massive form flowing down the tower stairs with surprising grace. He emerged onto the field carrying his prize weapon, a plasma rifle worth more than most planets' annual defense budgets. Name your terms, human. Alexei walked to a supply crate and pulled out a small mirror, no bigger than a playing card. He handed it to a confused cadet. Run to the far end of the field. Hold this up when you get there. The cadet looked to his superiors for confirmation, then sprinted across the kilometer-long parade ground. At that distance, the mirror was barely a speck of light. First shot wins? Vrex asked, already settling into his shooting position. No, Alexei said, pulling out another mirror, then another, and another. He handed them to different cadets. All 5 targets. Fastest time. The Zanari murmured in confusion. Multiple targets at extreme range, engaged rapidly? It went against every principle of precision shooting. Vrex's confidence wavered slightly, but he nodded. The cadets ran to their positions, spreading across the field at various distances and angles. On your signal, Alexei said, not even uncasing his rifle yet. Vrex took position, his plasma rifle humming to life. The advanced targeting system began calculating distances, wind speeds, atmospheric pressure. Numbers flowed across his scope's display in a waterfall of data. Begin! Vrex's first shot vaporized the nearest mirror in a flash of superheated light. He pivoted, acquired the second target, fired. The plasma bolt took nearly a second to reach the distant mirror. Hit! He was already moving to the third. The crowd watched in appreciation. This was their champion, showing the human how the Zanari conducted warfare. Alexei uncased his rifle. Vrex fired his third shot. Hit! Alexei went prone in one fluid motion. Vrex's fourth shot streaked across the field. Alexei fired 5 times in 7 seconds. The cracks of his rifle came so fast they almost blurred together. He didn't appear to aim, didn't seem to calculate. His body moved with the mechanical precision of a machine, but there was something else, an intuition that transcended conscious thought. All 5 of his bullets were still in flight when he stood up and began disassembling his rifle. Vrex fired his 5th shot, hitting his final target, a respectable time of 43 seconds. He turned to gloat, then froze. The tactical display showed 5 red confirmations at Alexei's targets. Time, 7.3 seconds. All kill shots, as the humans term them. Perfect center mass hits that would have dropped any living being instantly, but that wasn't what silenced the entire academy. It was the trajectory analysis. 2 of Alexei's shots had curved, not by accident, not by wind, but deliberately. He'd used atmospheric layers and thermal columns to bend the bullets' paths, hitting targets that should have been obscured by obstacles. How? Vrex's voice came out as a whisper. Alexei finished packing his rifle. You shoot at targets. I shoot through the space between heartbeats. You calculate trajectory. I feel it. You learn to shoot in an academy. I learned in places where missing meant watching friends die. In the observation tower, General Thax pulled up Alexei's service record on his private display. The real one, the one Earth had finally provided after Yarix's inquiries. His breathing stopped as he read. The Siege of New Vladivostok, 713 confirmed kills over 6 days. 1 man holding a strategic bridge against an entire invasion force. The Jakarta incident, a single shot through 3 buildings and a rainstorm to eliminate a terrorist leader mid-speech. Operation Whisper, 120 targets eliminated in 120 consecutive days. 1 shot per day. Never missing despite counter-sniper teams, electronic warfare, and active hunting parties. By the Ancient Ones, Thax murmured. He's not a sniper. He's a force of nature. Below, the Academy's warriors had broken formation, crowding around Alexei with questions. He answered them patiently, without arrogance, occasionally demonstrating a stance or grip adjustment. To him, this was simply sharing knowledge. To them, it was like receiving wisdom from death itself. That afternoon, in a secure conference room, the Empire's leadership gathered for an emergency session. The holographic display showed Alexei in his quarters, unaware he was being observed. He was maintaining his rifle with the tender care of a musician with a beloved instrument. We cannot allow him to leave, one counselor said. If he teaches other humans these techniques, you assume he's unique, Yarix interrupted. But what if he's average? What if Earth has thousands like him? The room fell silent at that terrifying possibility. Commander Kalith stood. There's something else. I've been analyzing his behavioral patterns, the way he moves, how he positions himself, his unconscious habits. This man has been in combat for so long that violence is his natural state. Peace is what's foreign to him. Meaning? Meaning we didn't invite a warrior to teach us. We invited a predator who's trying to remember how to be human. On the display, Alexei had finished cleaning his rifle. He moved to the window, looking out at the city. His lips moved and the audio pickups barely caught his words. Names, dozens of them, whispered like a prayer or a penance. Later that evening, Vrex found Alexei in the Academy's memorial garden, a place dedicated to fallen Zanari warriors. I need to know, Vrex said without preamble. The number in your file, is it real? Alexei didn't turn from the memorial wall he was studying. Every single one had a face, a life, a story that ended when our paths crossed. He touched one of the alien names carved in stone. Your people remember your warriors, mine try to forget theirs. 8,731, Vrex said. 8,732, Alexei corrected quietly. There was one more after the official count stopped. A kid, maybe 17, forced into uniform by warlords. He was terrified, crying, but he had a rifle and orders. He finally turned to face Vrex. I still see his face every night. Vrex's 4 eyes studied the human with new understanding. You carry them all. Every last one. It's the price of being good at something terrible. That night, the Empire's intelligence network buzzed with activity. They were pulling every piece of data they could find about human military capabilities. What they discovered was paralyzing. Alexei Volkov wasn't even in the top 10 human snipers by confirmed kills. He was simply the only one stable enough to send as an advisor. The real monsters, the ones with names like White Death 2 and the Ghost of Mumbai, were still on Earth, still active, still adding to their counts in conflicts the galaxy barely knew existed. The Zanari Empire, conquerors of 100 worlds, began to understand that they had fundamentally misunderstood humanity. They weren't a species of warriors or soldiers. They were a species of survivors who had turned killing into such an art that their moderate practitioners could reshape entire battles with a single bullet. When predators collide. The Peace Summit was meant to be the crown jewel of the Zanari Empire's diplomatic season. Representatives from 43 systems gathered in the Crystal Spire, a structure of pure transparent aluminum that rose 2 kilometers above the capital. It was considered the most secure location in known space, protected by shields, guards, and the simple fact that any attack would mean war with the Empire. Alexei stood at the edge of the main conference hall, nursing his 5th cup of coffee and watching the crowd with the tired eyes of someone who'd seen too many secure locations become killing fields. He wasn't officially part of the security detail, but Commander Kalith had quietly requested his presence. Just observe, she'd said. Your instincts might catch something we miss. 3 hours into the summit, those instincts started screaming. It wasn't any single thing. It was a pattern. A server who kept checking his watch despite having no scheduled breaks. A delegate whose breathing didn't match his calm expression. The way 3 separate maintenance workers had all happened to position themselves with clear sightlines to the podium. Alexei set down his coffee and began moving through the crowd with practiced casualness. His hand brushed his concealed sidearm, confirming its presence. The rifle was in his quarters, supposedly. In reality, he'd stashed it in 3 separate pieces around the conference hall the night before. Old habits. At the podium, Emperor Kalin himself was addressing the assembly, speaking of unity and shared prosperity. His golden scales caught the light as he gestured, making him a perfect target. Alexei's eyes tracked upward, following architectural lines and calculating angles. There, a maintenance hatch that shouldn't be open. The barely visible distortion of a cloaked figure. Active camouflage, high-end but not perfect. Heat shimmer gave them away if you knew how to look. He moved toward the nearest piece of his rifle, hidden behind a decorative panel. As his fingers found the familiar metal, the lights flickered. The attack came from 7 directions at once. The windows didn't shatter, they simply ceased to exist, disintegrated by shaped charges. Figures in black combat armor repelled through the openings, firing as they came. Not Zanari armor, something else. Something Alexei recognized with a chill. Hegemony Special Forces, he breathed. The Zanari's ancient enemy had decided to decapitate the Empire's leadership in one bold stroke. The hall erupted in chaos. Guards returned fire, their plasma bolts lighting up the air like a deadly fireworks display. Delegates scrambled for cover. The Emperor's personal shield flared to life, a bubble of blue energy. Alexei assembled his rifle in 15 seconds flat, muscle memory guiding his hands while his eyes tracked targets. A hegemony soldier was lining up a shot on Commander Kalith. Alexei fired without bringing the rifle fully to his shoulder. The soldier spun and fell. "Contact left!" someone screamed. Alexei was already moving, sliding behind a marble pillar as particle beams chewed through the space he'd just occupied. He counted muzzle flashes, 12 attackers through the windows, plus however many were already inside. Plus the sniper in the maintenance hatch who was the real threat. The Emperor's shield was strong, but it couldn't last forever. Already, concentrated fire was making it flicker. Alexei broke from cover, sprinting across open ground. Plasma bolts seared the air around him, but he moved in patterns that had kept him alive through 100 ambushes. Irregular, unpredictable, never the same rhythm twice. He dove behind an overturned table, came up firing. 3 shots, 3 hits. The hegemony forces were good, but they were used to fighting Zanari, warriors who stood their ground and traded fire. They weren't prepared for a human who fought like smoke. The sniper in the hatch finally revealed himself, a long rifle emerging from the shadows. Anti-shield round, Alexei recognized. One shot would collapse the Emperor's protection. The distance was 800 meters. The sniper was behind cover, only his rifle barrel visible. The shot was impossible. Alexei made it anyway. His bullet struck the enemy rifle's scope, traveled through the optical system, and found the sniper's eye. The figure tumbled from the hatch, dead before he hit the ground. But more hegemony forces were flooding in. This wasn't just an assassination, it was an invasion. They'd been planning this for months, maybe years. "Rally to the Emperor!" Kalith roared, her 4 arms wielding 2 rifles simultaneously. Alexei had a different idea. He pulled out his communicator, bypassing normal channels to access something he'd hoped never to use, a frequency Earth had given him, for emergencies only. "Volkov to Overwatch. Code Black, my position, now." The response was immediate. "Confirmed. Ghosts inbound. 2 minutes." 2 minutes. They had to survive 2 minutes. A hegemony soldier got too close. Alexei dropped the rifle, pulled his knife, and gave the alien a lesson in human close-quarters combat. It was brutal, efficient, and over in 3 seconds. Champion Vrex was down, green blood pooling beneath him. General Thax was pinned behind a pillar, taking fire from 3 directions. The Emperor's shield was failing, flickering like a dying flame. 90 seconds. Alexei snatched a plasma rifle from a fallen guard, dual-wielding it with his conventional rifle. He became a whirlwind of death, switching between weapons faster than the enemy could adapt. Long-range precision with the rifle, suppressing fire with the plasma. 60 seconds. A hegemony commander emerged, power armor making him a walking tank. He advanced on the Emperor's position, shrugging off plasma bolts like rain. Alexei put 3 rounds into the armor's knee joint. It didn't penetrate, but it made the commander stumble. That stumble saved the Emperor's life as a plasma blade swept through the space where his head had been. 30 seconds. The hall's main doors exploded inward. More hegemony troops. They were going to be overrun. 10 seconds. Alexei smiled for the first time since arriving on Zanari Prime. 5 seconds. The air suddenly smelled of iron and ozone. 0. They came through the windows like dark angels. 5 figures in armor that seemed to eat light, moving with the fluid grace of apex predators. No insignia, no identification. They didn't need any. Earth's ghost unit. The humans who made Alexei look moderate. The battle changed in an instant. Where the hegemony had brought overwhelming force, the ghosts brought surgical precision. They didn't fight. They simply removed threats with an efficiency that bordered on prescient. One ghost, a woman by her build, put 17 rounds into 17 targets in 4 seconds, never missing despite moving at full sprint. Another walked through plasma fire like it was rain, his armor's adaptive camouflage making him a blur of motion that enemies couldn't track. The hegemony commander in power armor turned to face these new threats. A ghost materialized behind him, drove a monomolecular blade through the armor's neck joint, and vanished before the body hit the ground. In 45 seconds, it was over. Every hegemony soldier was down. The ghost stood in a loose circle, weapons still ready, still scanning for threats. One of them approached Alexei. The helmet retracted, revealing a scarred face with dead eyes. "Volkov," the man said simply. "Didn't expect to see you playing diplomat." "Reaper," Alexei nodded. "Didn't expect to need you." Commander Kalith stared at these new humans, her tactical mind trying to process what she'd just witnessed. They'd moved through the battlefield like a force of nature, unstoppable and inevitable. "How many?" she asked Alexei quietly. "How many what? How many like them does Earth have?" Alexei looked at the ghosts who were already preparing to leave, their job done. "Officially, none. They don't exist. Unofficially, enough." The Emperor approached, his golden scales dulled with dust and blood. He looked at the ghosts, then at Alexei. "We misunderstood," he said slowly. "When Earth sent you, we thought it was sharing a warrior. But you're not warriors, are you? You're something else." Reaper's laugh was cold and humorless. "Warriors fight for honor, Your Majesty. We fight to win. There's a difference." As medical teams flooded the hall and security forces secured the perimeter, analyst Yarix approached Alexei with a tablet showing casualty figures. 43 hegemony special forces, dead, 5 of your ghosts, no casualties, how? Alexei accepted his rifle from one of the ghosts who'd retrieved it. "You evolve on a planet where everything tries to kill you. The weather, the wildlife, the gravity, other humans. You either get very good at killing back or you die. We got good." In the aftermath, as the Empire counted its dead and began to understand the full scope of the attempted coup, a new revelation emerged. The hegemony hadn't acted alone. 3 other rival powers had been prepared to strike if the assassination succeeded. They all quietly withdrew their forces when word spread about what had happened in the Crystal Spire. Not because the assassination had failed, but because of how it had failed. The human ghosts had sent a message without meaning to. Earth's warriors weren't just dangerous. They were something far more terrifying. They were efficient. That evening, Emperor Callan called Alexei to his private chambers. The room was simple, almost austere, nothing like the public grandeur the Empire usually displayed. "Your real mission wasn't to teach us marksmanship, was it?" the Emperor asked. Alexei shook his head. "Earth wanted to show you what we are. Not to threaten, but to prevent misunderstanding. Too many species have mistaken our preference for peace as weakness. And now? Now you know. We choose peace, but we're very, very good at the alternative." The Emperor was quiet for a long moment. 8,732. Tomorrow it might be 33, or it might stay that way forever. Depends on whether people keep giving me reasons. The hegemony will want revenge. Alexei shrugged. Let them come. Earth has 17 billion humans. Even if only 1% are like me, that's more than most species have in their entire military. The truth of it settled over the Emperor like a cold weight. Humanity hadn't conquered the galaxy not because they couldn't, but because they chose not to. They were the sleeping giant everyone had walked past, not realizing it was awake, watching, deciding whether to move. 3 days later, Alexei prepared to leave Zanari Prime. The entire military academy turned out to see him off, along with hundreds of civilians who'd heard the stories. He'd become something of a legend, the small human who'd saved their emperor and revealed the true face of humanity. Vrex, recovered from his wounds, approached as Alexei boarded his transport. "Will you come back?" Alexei smiled, the expression almost reaching his eyes. "Probably not. But others will. Earth wants friends, not subjects. We're tired of killing. But still capable of it. Always. That's the burden of being good at something terrible. You never really get to stop." As the transport lifted off, Commander Kalith stood with the Emperor, watching it disappear into the clouds. "Do you think they'll make good allies?" she asked. The Emperor thought of the ghosts, of Alexei's impossible shots, of a species that had turned violence into such an art that their moderate practitioners could shift the balance of galactic power. "I think," he said carefully, "that we should be very grateful they want to be allies at all." The transport reached orbit, where an Earth battlecruiser waited, a ship that had been there all along, cloaked and silent, ready to extract their people if necessary. The Zanari detected it only as it powered up to leave. The message was clear. Humanity was done being underestimated. In his cabin aboard the cruiser, Alexei finally allowed himself to truly relax. He set aside his rifle, hung up his jacket, and pulled out a worn photograph. His daughter, killed in the Jakarta bombing that had started his journey into darkness. "Maybe now," he whispered to the image, "I can stop adding to the count." But even as he said it, he knew better. The universe was vast and full of threats, and humanity, for better or worse, had gotten very good at dealing with threats. The cruiser jumped to hyperspace, carrying the human sniper home. Behind him, the Zanari Empire began broadcasting a message to all known systems. "Humanity seeks peace. We strongly suggest you accept their offer." The galaxy listened. Word spread through diplomatic channels and black market information brokers alike. The humans weren't conquerors or crusaders. They were something far more dangerous. A species that had mastered violence so completely they could choose when not to use it. And for the first time in galactic history, everyone hoped humanity would keep choosing peace. Because the alternative had a number attached to it. 8,732, and counting.